Okay, welcome all. So we are going to start a new three-part series, and like I mentioned a few minutes ago on the Zoom to Louise, this three-part series is in honor of the Rebbe's Yahrzeit, Rebbe's anniversary of passing, which is this year on June 25th. The course is called Inlook, Outlook. It's guidance from the Rebbe on life's challenges. Now, this series is particularly interesting because I don't know if I ever did this before, taught this before. This series is not just text from Torah and things like that. This is a class primarily based on the Rebbe's correspondence with different people. To date, there's actually more than 30 volumes of the Rebbe's letters to people. It contains more than 10,000 letters, and it's been published. And these represent only a very small portion of the Rebbe's letters. The Rebbe's letters were addressed to people from literally all walks of life, world leaders. There were kindergarten teachers, there were scientists, there's teenagers, and there's a lot of scholarly letters, as well as a lot of personal advice on the most basic struggles of life. So we're going to focus on this latter category in this series, as we're going to discover. No, that's not me, Mitch. That's someone else's dog. Not yet. Friend, someone on Facebook thinks that we got a dog because they heard Sadie barking. So.
Who got a dog?
They think that we got a dog because they heard a dog barking in the background.
That was my dog.
I know. I'm like, not
I
yet.
yelled at her.
So we're going to discover the Rebbe's approach to these subjects, and they run a lot deeper than one might expect. The reason why this particular class is going to be even more interesting is because most of the time it was actually very uncommon that the Rebbe referred to his own personal life in his letters. The letter that we're going to study today is the rare exception. In this letter, which was written in 1944, which was 6 years before the Rebbe became the Rebbe. The Rebbe became the Rebbe in 1950 after his father-in-law passed away. So the Rebbe refers to a personal experience, and he draws on that to share a life lesson with the correspondent in the letter. So I'm going to read this letter in English, and I'm going to give you just the background to this letter over here. So this was December 13, 1944. This was dated then. He writes to my esteemed and honored friend, Mr. Dov Fedber. Greetings and blessings. Your letter awakened memories of the time that we were together in Vichy and Nice. There's something, one second, whoever's on Zoom. Let me see if I can share the screen. Yes, there we go. So I'm not sure if you guys can see. If you guys can see, let me know.
You should.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to read it inside. Your letter awakened memories of the time that we were together in Vichy and Nice, each of us under living conditions to which they were unaccustomed. When a person is uprooted from their habitual environment until such time that they become accustomed to the new conditions and requirements, there come to light certain traits of their inner character as they are in their purity, undistorted by the expectations of society. Often, these traits reveal hidden virtues of the person, virtues that have been hidden even from themselves under the layers of manners and social conventions. In such cases, fortunate is the person who does not allow these traits to disappear when they subsequently settle down and find tranquility. So that's the Rebbe's letter as it was written to this person. Now let me just give you a very, very brief background. Welcome to all those on Facebook. I see Mitch, Ross, Ariana, Laura. Welcome. So just a background to this letter. After Hitler's rise to power in 1933, the Rebbe and his wife, the Rebbe's wife's name, I'm not sure how many of you are actually familiar with this, his wife's name was Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. Chaya Mushka is one of the most common Chabad girls' names, Chaya Mushka. And they were living in Berlin at the time, and they relocated to Paris. When Nazi Germany, the army of Nazi Germany, entered Paris in June of, I believe, 1940, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, his wife, fled on one of the last trains to leave the city of Paris. Now, for the next 12 months, the Rebbe and his wife were refugees in Vichy, France. I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly. Vichy?
Vichy, yeah.
Vichy, yeah? Okay, good. It's the southern part of France, which was governed at that time by Nazi collaborators, but not by the Nazis themselves. So though they were constantly on the run, with the danger of Jews trying to survive in Nazi Europe, the Rebbe worked very, very hard to help many of his fellow refugees in their struggles to survive. Now, finally, just a quick background, after a lot of effort, a lot of political connections that he managed to pull off in America by his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, who escaped Nazi-occupied Warsaw to New York in March of 1940. So the Rebbe and his wife were able to escape through Lisbon, Portugal, and they were able to sail to New York in June of 1941. Now, this letter that we just read was written 3.5 years later to someone who was together with the Rebbe in the French cities of Vichy and Nice. And the Rebbe recalls their shared experience as refugees who were uprooted from their habitual environment, and they were thrown into this living conditions which they were not accustomed to. So I think this is pretty familiar to a lot of people, no? Now obviously, there are many things in a refugee's experience that thankfully do not apply to our current situation, but there are certain elements that we can definitely relate to. I think many of us are feeling out of our element. We're disoriented. We are confused by the sudden change in our lives. It's a very interesting time in history. But before I get to the comparison between what the Rebbe was bringing to this, I want to speak about a very important point. The way Judaism views every single Jew in the Jewish nation. So I want to read, if we can, I'm not sure if we can get to that. 1 second. I'm going to share the screen for those on Zoom. Just 1 second. There we are. So in text 3, yeah, there we are. Text 3 on bottom. This is a quote from Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, who is the former chief rabbi of Britain, of United Kingdom of England. Brilliant man, brilliant. One of my favorite rabbis. And he brings out this point that we'll read in text 3, which is an important one. A letter on its own has no meaning, right? Just a letter. Take the letter B, has no meaning. Yet when letters are joined to others, they make a word. Words combine with others to make a sentence. Sentences connect to make a paragraph, and paragraphs join to make a story. That is how the Baal Shem Tov understood life. The Baal Shem Tov is the founder of the Hasidic movement. That's how on this premise is how he founded the Hasidic movement. Every Jew is a letter. Each Jewish family is a word. Every community, a sentence, and the Jewish people at any one time are a paragraph. The Jewish people through time constitute a story, the strangest and most moving story in the annals of mankind. So this is just a quote, this is just a quote from Rabbi Sacks, but this brings out a very, very important point. And that is that our families, our social life, our families, our workplace, our communities, and even just the casual interaction with strangers in the public space play a major role in, I think I would say the word nurturing our productivity. And it's no surprise that when all that is taken from us, we feel lost and disoriented because a major component of our humanity is sorely lacking. The Rebbe, however, and I mention this tens of times, whoever follows any time that I speak, is that the Rebbe believed that that in any situation you are in, any situation you find yourself, we should always seek out the positive part of that situation. So now, while being uprooted from our community and social network is obviously a negative part to this experience, there's also a positive side to it as well. What's that? The community and society provide us not only with fellowship and support, but they also make certain demands of us. I think we can all relate to this. Men and women, maybe more females. I actually spoke with this spoke about this with Leah before. But sometimes these demands are beneficial. They push us to be our best. But sometimes these societal demands have the opposite effect. They suppress the best in us, and they intimidate us from fully expressing our own potential, our own values and potential. And just an interesting story is there was once a student, a chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek was one of the Chabad Rebbes, lived in the late 1700s and the early 1800s. And his chassid, his student, was a businessman. And his business took him to centers in the large cities of Russia, and as well to many other foreign capitals. So as time went by, he became very uncomfortable in these environments with his long black coat and his headgear. So gradually, slowly but surely, he adopted a more secular mode of dress on his business trips. So of course, he continued to travel to his Rebbe in the traditional Hasidic garb, but when he went on business, he wore the more secular mode of dress. So one day he appeared in the town of Lubavitch, which is the center of Chabad in Russia, and he appeared there in his business clothes. So he told the Rebbe, he says, "Rebbe, I decided to put an end to my hypocritical behavior, and I want to be true to myself. This is how I dress on my travels, on my business deals, and why should I convince myself and others with my Hasidic clothes?" So the Rebbe says, "Rebbe Enkel, do you think that I was not aware that you dressed differently in Leipzig, which was the center, and in Paris, the places that you do business than you do in Lubavitch? Obviously, I was sure that you wear different clothes when you go on business. But I thought that here you showed us your true self, and that over there you were the hypocrite. Now I see, not so much." So this peer pressure, these community standards, these social norms work both ways. Sometimes they can support, our best instincts, and they provide us with an environment that we can flourish the most amazing way. But on the other hand, societal norms can sometimes suppress us. They suppress our best instincts, and they don't allow us to grow the way we really should. Sometimes we, and this is very common, sometimes people pick a career in life that is more in line with what society admires than with our true abilities and what you feel is more of your calling. We may hold back on spiritual growth because we're intimidated by what others will think of us. So clearly, we have to find that real balance between our social self and our inner self. A very famous quote from Hillel, one of the greatest sages in the Talmudic era, was in Hebrew, "Im ein ani li, mi li, uchsha'ani la'atzmi ma'ani." Translated loosely into English is, if I'm not for myself, who is for me? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? What he was saying is that on the one hand, if I'm not for myself, who is me? Don't let others define who you are and what you do with your life. That has to come from within. Only you can discover your true strengths and your purpose in life. But at the same time, if I'm only for myself, what am I? You need the assistance and the partnership and sometimes even the guidance of others. And think about it. Sometimes it's only with the assistance and the context of relationships with our friends, with our community and society that we can truly shine and accomplish our goals. So obviously, yes, our own letter can find its meaning only in the context of the word and sentences and paragraphs of which it is a part of. But in order to contribute its part, it needs to fully discover and express its own identity, its own unique contribution. So it's a very hard balance, and I hope that I'm not confusing a few of you with these fancier words sometimes. But the point is that we have to try to find a balance of who we are as a person, try to express ourselves the best way possible, the way we feel we should express ourselves, not by the peer pressure of others. And on the other hand, use the guidance and the help of a community, of a friend, of family, to further your purpose in life. So just to tie it back to the Rebbe's letter about his time being a refugee. So at the time the Rebbe wrote his letter, he was no longer a refugee, just to be clear. The Rebbe was already appointed by his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, to head the educational and the outreach institutions of Chabad. the same institutions that would eventually grow into the networks of thousands of Chabad centers around the world. And he was back in his communal mode. But the Rebbe still cherished his time when, as he writes in his letter, just to quote, I'll go back, that there come to light certain traits of a person's inner character as they are in their purity, undistorted by the expectations of society. It's a moment of clarity when we can tap in, when we can touch base with who and what we are in essence. And the circumstances that create these moments may be less than ideal, but whenever we do find ourselves in these situations, we should utilize it to the utmost. So when things get back to normal, and hopefully this will be very soon in our situation as well, we should remember and hold on to what we learned during these moments of clarity. As the Rebbe continued in his letter, and I've seen this quoted many times by different people. I even saw an Israeli singer compose a song that we hope things don't get back to normal. We hope that after this time, as the Rebbe wrote, fortunate is the person who does not allow these traits to disappear when they subsequently settle down and find tranquility. Hopefully, when things get back to normal, we won't let this time be forgotten. We'll learn from this time, from these moments, the best of ourselves. We didn't choose the circumstances that we currently find ourselves in. Social distancing is totally contrary to our nature. It's definitely contrary to my nature. I'm all in for when someone comes into Chabad, I would love to, shake their hand, give them a hug. And it goes without saying that, that we would never choose our own personal tragedies, our financial hardships, our loneliness, the emotional distress to which many of us are, being subjected to. But the Rebbe saw that even the most challenging circumstances is an opportunity. This can be a very liberating moment for a lot of us. A lot of the noise in our lives, the peer pressure, the office politics, putting a face on things, that has gone away, or at least the noise level has been lowered. So this is an opportunity to encounter and to meet the true you. Who is the true you? What do we really want to achieve in our life? What's the best use that we can make of our God-given talents and abilities? Are we being true to the purpose for which we were created? So we don't know when everything will get back to normal, to be honest, but eventually, and God willing, it will. But when that happens, we're going to resume our lives as social creatures, regaining the connections that we have with our family, with our friends, and our community that help us thrive. But when we do, I am begging every single one of you, and this is something that we can easily tap into. This is one of the easier lessons that I'm going to end off with, that when we do get back to normal, let us remember that what we learned from ourselves during these trying times should not be forgotten. Let us tap into that because there are certain things that you can tap into right now that are never going to be revealed if not for these situations. So let's tap into that as much as possible and learn from them, and let us be helped by that in the future. So l'chaim to all of you.